Let's go live now to political correspondent Cameron Reddin in Canberra. Now, Cam, the Prime Minister has responded to these developments. What has he had to say?
Yeah, the word of this ceasefire spreading across the world, Kenny. This is being welcomed across the political divide, as you can imagine. It has various implications at home, from politics to security to policing. And there is a hope amongst both sides that this ceasefire, while not a direct end to the war, will also lower the temperature when it comes to the mood in some parts of the community and potentially put a stem to some of the anti-Semitic incidents, more than 100 being investigated by federal police. In the last few minutes, the Prime Minister has released this statement. It's a lengthy one when it comes to the brokering of this ceasefire in the Middle East. I want to read it to you in full. The Prime Minister says Australia welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire and a hostage agreement in Gaza after 15 months of conflict and a devastating loss of civilian life. He says Australia has consistently been a part of the international call for a ceasefire and the release of hostages. We urge all parties to respect its terms and safeguard a lasting peace, including ensuring the immediate release of all hostages and unimpeded and sustained increases in humanitarian assistance to all parts of Gaza. He goes on to say, our thoughts are with all the civilians killed, displaced and taken hostage in this conflict, and the many humanitarian workers who lost their lives in the service of others. This agreement is a constructive step towards peace and stability in the region. It must mark the beginning of a new chapter for the Israeli and Palestinian people. Australia will continue working with the international community towards a two-state solution, a Palestinian state and the State of Israel, living side by side in peace and security within internationally recognised borders. The Prime Minister says we hope it will allow the Palestinian people the opportunity to rebuild, reform their governance and pursue self-determination. Australia remains unequivocal in our condemnation of Hamas atrocities on October 7 and its ongoing acts of terror. There must be no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza. Any future Palestinian state, he says, must not be in a position to threaten Israel's security. We will continue to act in partnership with the international community to support the urgent humanitarian needs of the people of Gaza. And he says we thank the mediators, the United States, Qatar and Egypt, for their tireless efforts to bring parties to an agreement to end this war. So that statement just out in the last minute or so from the Prime Minister, noting that he wants the release of all hostages. Now, this deal allows at least a pathway for 33 in this first phase. The hope is that by the end of this process, that all hostages will be returned, the roughly 94 or so that remain. You can see some of the live images on your screen now from Tel Aviv. I also want to show you and your viewers, Kenny, this image from earlier this morning. Mark Dreyfus, the Attorney General, a timing of convenience perhaps, currently in Israel, meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of Israel in the last 12 hours or so. He's there for discussions, was due to visit at the end of last year, but due to an outbreak of violence had to put that visit off until this week, and he is now there when this ceasefire deal has been struck. So, Kenny, that's the first initial reaction as Australians wake up to this news this morning. It will be warmly welcomed across the political divide, certainly across the community, and there is hope broadly that this may now lower the temperature and hopefully lead to a reduction in some of those incidents of anti-Semitism that have been seen for many weeks and months in Australia.